For more than 1,000 years, the empires of the north ruled this land. They called it their own and governed it from a throne 1,000 miles away. Many rose to fight them, generals, rebels, even two sisters who became queens. And one by one across 10 centuries, every last one of them fell. Then in a single afternoon on a tidal river, one man drowned an entire invading fleet beneath a forest of hidden stakes and shattered 1,000 years of foreign rule. This is the story of the battle that gave birth to Vietnam. It began more than 1,000 years ago. The armies of the North marched south, conquered the land of the Viet, and wiped its old kings from the record. For 10 long centuries, this was no kingdom of its own, only a far-flung province of a foreign empire, carved into districts and ruled by officials sent down from a distant court. Its people paid heavy tribute, labored under foreign masters, and were taught that their own ancient ways were the customs of barbarians. The conquerors brought their language, their laws, and their gods, and set out to make the Viet forget they had ever been a people of their own. But the people did not forget, and again they rose. In the year 40, a governor named To Ding ruled with such cruelty that he put to death the husband of a noblewoman named Trung Trax. It would prove a fatal mistake. She did not grieve in silence. With her sister Trung Nhi, she rallied the lords of the land and rode to war at the head of a rebel army. They stormed 65 strongholds and drove the foreign rulers clean out of the country. For 3 shining years, 2 sisters reigned as queens of a free people. Then the empire sent its greatest general to take it all back. The sisters fought to the last, and when the end came, rather than kneel to the conqueror, they vanished beneath the waters of a river. 2 centuries later, a warrior woman named Bach rose in their place, declaring she would sooner ride the great winds and cut down the whales of the open sea than bow her head as any man's slave. Clad, so the old stories say, in golden armor and riding to battle upon an elephant, for a time she struck fear into the armies of the north, but she too in the end was crushed. Still they came. A lord named Li Bi drove out the foreigners and dared to crown himself emperor of the south, claiming for the first time to stand as an equal to the emperor of the north. He named his kingdom Van Xuan, 10,000 springs. It did not last 10,000 springs. Within a few decades, it too was gone, and so it went for 1,000 years. A hero would rise, a fragile freedom would flicker to life, and the empire of the north would always in the end return. But no empire lasts forever. By the early 10th century, the mighty Tang dynasty of China was tearing itself apart, and its grip on the distant south at last began to slip. In the chaos, a Vietnamese lord named Huc Thua Du quietly seized control of his own land. He still ruled in the empire's name, but in truth, he now answered to no one. A general named Dong Din Nghe went further still. In 931, he drove a southern Chinese power, the Southern Han, out of the great citadel of Daila and ruled the land of the Viet as its own lord. Among his most trusted commanders was his own son-in-law, a warrior born in the village of Duong Lam, a man named Ngô Quyền. But the dream nearly died from within. In 937, one of Duong Din Nghe's own officers, Kieu Kong Tien, murdered his lord to seize power for himself. Ngô Quyền would not let the betrayal stand. He gathered his army and marched north to destroy the man who had killed his lord. Cornered and terrified, Kieu Kong Tien did the unthinkable. He sent word across the border, begging the Southern Han to invade the country and rescue him. The Chinese Emperor Liu Yan seized the excuse he had long awaited. He sent his own son, Prince Liu Hongkao, sailing down the coast with a great war fleet and held a second army in reserve, ready to pour across the border behind him. Ngô Quyền struck first. He stormed the citadel and killed the traitor, then turned at once to face the invasion fleet now bearing down upon his shores. He chose his ground with a master's eye, the Bach Đằng, a wide tidal river near the sea, where the water rose and fell by several meters with every turn of the tide. There he laid one of the great traps in the history of war. Thousands of stakes were cut from hardwood, their points sharpened and sheathed in iron, and driven deep into the riverbed, hidden completely beneath the surface when the tide ran high. When Prince Liu Hongchao's fleet swept in from the sea, the tide stood full, and the deadly stakes lay invisible under the calm water. Ngô Quyền sent out a handful of small light boats to dart in, strike at the great ships, and then flee back upriver, as though scattering in panic. The prince took the bait. Certain of an easy victory, he drove his heavy warships hard after them, deep into the river, and straight over the line of hidden stakes. And then, exactly as Ngô Quyền had planned, the tide began to fall. One by one, the great ships settled down onto the iron tips. Hulls split open, decks tilted, and the whole proud fleet was impaled and trapped, going nowhere in the sinking water. Ngô Quyền gave the signal. From both banks of the river, fireboats and the warriors of the Viet burst out and fell upon the helpless fleet. More than half the invaders drowned in the Bach Đằng that day. Prince Liu Hongchao himself was killed in the water. His father, waiting with the reserve army, could only weep for his son and turn for home. In the spring of 939, Ngô Quyền proclaimed himself king and raised his capital at Ko Loa, the great spiral fortress that had been the seat of Vietnamese kings long before the darkness ever began. The choice was a message to his people. The old line of kings had come home. After more than 1,000 years, the land was free. The victory at Bach Đằng did not merely win a battle. It ended more than 10 centuries of foreign rule. And unlike every fragile freedom before it, this one would hold. But a freedom so newly won is a fragile thing. Ngô Quyền reigned for only 5 years before his death. Without him, the young nation shattered into the hands of 12 rival warlords who turned their swords upon one another. While across the border, the Empire of the North watched the chaos with hungry eyes and waited for its chance to march south once more. Then a man named Dien Bo Lin, remembered in legend as a boy who drilled his playmates into armies beneath banners woven from reeds, crushed the 12 warlords one by one and bound the broken land back together. In 968, he crowned himself emperor and gave his realm a name of its own, Đại Cồ Việt. A century later, it would be renamed Đại Việt, the Great Viet, the kingdom that would grow over the centuries into the nation we now call Vietnam. And the river never forgot. 350 years later, when the Mongols, who had conquered half the world, came sailing up the Bach Đằng, a Vietnamese commander planted the very same stakes in the riverbed and drowned them in the very same trap. The empires of the north rose and fell again. But on this narrow strip of land beside the sea, a people who had been ruled for 1,000 years simply refused to disappear. Empires fall, people remain.